from Los Angeles. Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, I mean, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth,
all while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
Uh-oh, with me, Cary Harrison, as your guide.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Cary Harrison with you, reminding you to get our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com. A great way to stay connected, especially during these exciting dystopian times, which are likely only to get worse. So let's make sure we know how to stay in touch with each other. Excuse me. An important announcement. So turn your radio all the way up to 10. Excuse me. These fires are driving us all nuts. If you're driving a car, roll up the windows. If you're wearing earbuds, crank it up to the top. If you're streaming, don't pinch it off in the middle. Starting next Friday, Rethinking Heroes is going to shed its noble but unwieldy title and emerge as the Cary Harrison Files, sliding into the 10 a.m. slot. So going from now, the 9 a.m. slot, to the 10 a.m. slot, 1 hour later. And it's not a rebranding, it's a redistribution of intellectual firepower, the kind of move that sharpens the blade and keeps the machine humming. The Thom Hartmann Show, America's favorite forum for reasoned debate, is now going to flow seamlessly through 9 a.m. Then at 10 on Fridays, you're going to hear the Cary Harrison Files, a pivot point, a pulpit, if you will, for unearthing hidden truths, skewering nonsense, and stitching together the threads of the City of Angels. In this dystopian era, with crosshairs painted on all our backs, this is progress, a smart, strategic adjustment that benefits not just you, but Thom Hartmann flows seamlessly through Friday. So I want you to set your clocks, brace your minds, and join me next Friday at 10 a.m., next Friday at 10 a.m., when the Cary Harrison Files takes its new stage, which as always includes your live calls. You're going to thank us later because this is going to be a totally unusual thrill ride. Now, back to the plot of today's play. In the grim carnival of American democracy, the 2024 election was less a stirring drama and more a tragic farce, a tale of squandered chances and willful deafness. The Democrats, once self-appointed apostles of hope and heralds of progress, found themselves ensnared, not by the cunning of their foes, but by their own ineptitude, tripping over their principles like drunkards on a moonlit stroll. So picture, if you will, a ship adrift on a restless sea, its crew not hammered by raging storms, but undone by their own lack of bearings. So too are the Democrats in this election, rudderless, their message a shapeless fog, unable to cut through the hearts of those they claimed to champion. The common folk, weary and disenchanted, turned their gaze elsewhere, leaving the Democrats howling at an empty moon. Meanwhile, the Republicans, a cynical but disciplined legion, fortified their dominion with the precision of termites devouring the foundation. Their conquest of 25 steadfast states was no accident of history, but the fruit of cold strategy and relentless ambition. Against this fortress, the Democrats advanced like a ragged army marching into quicksand. And so voters delivered their verdict with brutal uniformity. A nationwide swing that exposed a profound estrangement between the Democrats and the people they pretend to understand. And in their mad pursuit of lofty abstractions and empty slogans, the Democrats abandoned the gritty truths that once defined their own purpose, right? They neither listened nor adapted, they merely flailed. Joining us is Mason Scott, whose new book is coming out this weekend. It's called Gringos Eating Tacos, in which he has devoted a special chapter to the recent election and the shortcomings we all eyewitnessed. Mason Scott, also fluent in mechanical engineering and analytical philosophy, provides a prescription and some thoughts on navigating this impossible future in this, his second book. Mason Scott, I want to welcome you.
Hey, it's always good to talk to you. I love having our conversations, Cary, and it's always a pleasure.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you here, especially during these times and as we look into the murky crystal ball of the future, maybe auguring a few go-to messages that can offer some comfort and direction. So let me just jump on in. Your new book, Gringos Eating Tacos, you decided to add an extra chapter that actually reflects on recent times. Do you think the Democratic Party's messaging resonated effectively with working class Americans, or was there a disconnect that led to diminished support?
There was an epic yawning disconnect, alas, and zero resonance, which basically accounts for the fact that the working class migrated to the right almost by default, for lack of a better option, which was heartbreaking to witness, but that is what happened.
And it happened, so it is now the reality. So it's not a Netflix series. Part one is through. We've got every day, like we're on the third or fourth day already, and it's Nazi Germany of 1932. That anyone who knows history will know what I mean. If you don't know history, why, that's a dramatic thing. Well, guess what? The federal government has removed all LGBT references, HIV healthcare. Now you can not only not have vaccines, but let's just bring back AIDS and let everyone have it. And the problem of the enemy will solve itself. This is sort of the plan. To what extent do you think internal divisions within the Democratic Party contributed to their electoral defeat?
Well, the lack of discipline you referenced earlier is definitely one of the issues. I just wanted to mention that you are doing shows back to back with Tom Hartman. I want to say that you and he are both in each other's great company, because what a great thinker he is also. And I've always been heavily influenced by his insights. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Tom Hartman. But yeah, I basically couldn't have said it better myself in your intro monologue there. The disarray within the Democratic Party, I think, is largely the explanation for the result of the 2024 election. And I guess, internal corruption that still plagues that party, I think, is something that needs to be addressed head on. Bernie Sanders tried to do that in the past decade a couple times, to no avail, or to limited avail, we should say. But we have to keep forging forward and trying to address the dysfunction that is kind of plaguing the Democratic Party at this point.
So the Democratic Party, because we're only allowed in this country with almost 12,000 multi-tip thermonuclear weapons, with the largest empire of military dotted around the planet, we're allowed two political parties, chocolate and vanilla. That's it. Mm-hmm. You could call yourself whatever you want, but you don't exist. You don't even get to be in the debate. You're toast. Forget it. So the resistance is whatever's left of the Democratic Party. That's the resistance.
And the Democratic Party begrudgingly accommodates the progressive cause, the resistance against the party machinery, against the establishment. So it's almost a default option that progressives need to go with, unfortunately. The lesser of two evils. And it's just the same story every election cycle. And again, it's heartbreaking to kind of witness the same thing like a broken record every time. And I think that the answer is to not become too frustrated, but to keep our chins up, forge onward, and address what needs to be addressed, which is basically the corporatism that still exists within the Democratic Party, the corporate collusion that still corrupts its agenda, which has left a bad taste in many people's mouths, understandably, and other things such as, I think, the identity politics kind of gets out of hand sometimes, and that is very off-putting to the average Joe, the regular American working class bloke who cannot quite get on board with some of the more extreme manifestations of political correctness, identity politics, which don't seem to address his economic concerns. So it has been very off-putting. And I think the Democratic Party has shot an otherwise good cause in the foot by embracing some of the more what I call weaponized etiquette, which is basically putting propriety.
I grew up with weaponized etiquette, but that was different.
and I mean, the mistake there is you're confusing propriety for probity. In other words, you're confusing formality as a kind of morality.
Yeah.
And so long as we fixate on token formalities, we're going to miss the underlying principles, which are civil rights, human rights, getting money out of politics, fighting corporatism and corporate power. That the Democratic Party is almost as complicit as the GOP, in my estimation, when it comes to corporate government collusion. And as long as the Democratic Party does not come to grapple with that, it's going to continue to not resonate with America's working class.
All right, let me just jump in for a second, reintroduce you. Cary Harrison here with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Please sign up for our free newsletter where we can list a lot of stuff that we simply cannot do on the radio. Also moving next week, starting next week to 10 a.m. Next week, 10 a.m. Pacific. So this slot here at 9 a.m., it will be Tom Hartman all the way through to Friday. So this is an awesome thing we've been able to construct and deliver. We're moving to 10. So Mitch Jeserich will be on Monday through Friday. Then we'll be on next Friday starting at 10 a.m. with a wild and woolly new version called the Cary Harrison Files. But rethinkingheroes.com is a great place to stay connected. We'll be able to give you updates and transcripts of this show and everything going forward. We're talking to Mason Scott, whose new book is Gringos Eating Tacos. It's his second book, and in this one, he's devoted a special chapter to the recent election and the shortcomings that we all eyewitnessed. And we're looking at a prescription and some thoughts on navigating this current dystopian future only in the first few days in. We will be opening up the phone lines a little later because we're going to delve into some other stuff. Much of what you're going to be hearing on the air, not from me today. Well, I shouldn't say that because you will. But generally speaking, you're going to hear a lot of us on the station. We're constantly going to be talking about and taking apart the GOP, the current GOP, not the Republicans, maybe that your parents were, not the Eisenhower Republicans, but the Trump version. This is an opportunity also to express the frustration that you might have with the Democratic Party, where you threw your money, your trust, your soul. You were handed Sleepy Joe, which turned out to be sort of true near the end for 4 years, a decent guy. Then you were thrown Kamala. Nobody was allowed to run against her. I mean, people sort of showed up, but they really unexisted, just declared, here's your candidate, take it and like it. And then it didn't work. And here we are today looking at the most grim future imaginable. Mason Scott is laying out how this sort of happened and what we might expect. Let's talk a little bit about Mason Scott about external factors like economic conditions and public perception of the incumbent administration. That would be the Biden administration. How did that influence voter behavior in this recent election?
Well, the Democratic Party has not pushed back against the faux populism of the right wing. Fascism, at the end of the day, is faux populism, right? It's kind of a counterfeit version of populism. It's not actually doing good by the common man, looking out for marginalized communities, but it pretends to. So it's a faux populism that creates its appeal to the masses when they're woefully uninformed. And the only thing I would say that can defeat faux populism is real populism. And the Democratic Party has been derelict with regard to offering real, genuine populism. And in the absence of real populism, faux populism is going to win every time. So I would just repeat the mantra that the only thing that can defeat faux populism is real populism. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party has been decidedly anti-populist. It is kind of mutated into the alternate Wall Street party, the party of corporate interests, and only put up, kind of mealy-mouthed lip service to progressive ideals, and used, as I said before, weaponized etiquette as kind of a virtue signaling pageant to kind of
Pageant.
yeah, it's a pageant of virtue signaling that they've.
Yeah,
that,
let me
that
put on
they've
my
offered.
sash.
Yeah, and it's not genuinely populist. So in the absence of genuine populism, fascism, which is faux populism, is going to win every time, because when people are frustrated and having trouble paying their bills, the rent, exorbitant medical bills, with inflation, people are going to be resentful, and they're going to migrate toward whoever is offering a bold solution to their everyday problems. It seems populist is gonna win and triumph in that scenario if there's no genuinely populist alternative to go to, and right now there isn't.
And it seems, Mason Scott, as we wrap up here, that what we heard from the Democrats during the entire campaign was just a lot of soothing emollients. That everything is fine. Really, everything is fine.
What are you complaining about? The stock market's doing fine. You say to the average working class guy in the Rust Belt who has no concern for stock options right now. He's
right.
Trying to
like your ETFs have gone up because they're indexed. Huh?
Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, it's talk about being disconnected and out of touch with the common working man. It's just it was exasperating to witness. And then, going on tour with Liz Cheney was seen as the magical fix in the Rust Belt to get the Rust Belt working class voters to vote Democratic. Literally the worst decision maybe in political history. So,
well, now we have Marianne Williamson doing the circuit, saying that she'd like to run the Democratic Party. It would be a definite alternative. The Democratic Party is not likely to open a welcoming door, not even probably a crack of a door. But are they weak enough or vulnerable enough to allow a progressive with some energy to at least smash through a little bit?
Well, Justice Democrats, which is really the only genuinely progressive caucus within the Democratic Party, is, like I said, begrudgingly accommodated by the old guard, by the top brass, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the DLC. And I would say it's not going to be until the old guard kind of passes away, metaphorically speaking, or literally, I guess, that the establishmentarian corporatist old guard is what I'm referring to. Until they no longer run the show, it's going to be very difficult for genuine progressives, the Justice Democrats, to make many inroads, because the obstacles are just formidable right now within the party machinery, which is beholden to the kind of incumbent old brass corporatist figureheads that still kind of call the shots.
Yeah, and the fantasy, Mason Scott, is that we're still in a normal system like 3 weeks ago. So if only they would do this, they don't exist. They've been rendered toothless, almost illegal. I mean, that's on the way. And I'm going to be getting into that after the break, into what's actually happened in just the past few days and what the plan is ahead. It's greater than Project 2025 because it's the details that maybe weren't published in there, and how individual governors of red states have already taken extraordinary action, which is already damaging and will kill people. So understanding that is helpful. Let me ask you finally your prescription, if you can, or any thoughts on a remedy or a way for this flailing Democratic Party, or just call it resistance, whatever it looks like. What can it do to deal with the next 4 years of, well, let's just call it fascism? I mean, it's Mussolini's wet dream, the intertwining of corporation and government as one entity.
Well, I think generating awareness is really the main thing that needs to be done, making people understand that right-wing economic policy is not the magical elixir for their woes. If you go further right with economic policy, it's going to favor corporate power. It's going to favor the ultra affluent financial powers that run the country currently. I mean, Capitol Hill is basically the world's biggest auction block. You could say legislation's bought and sold to the highest bidder right now. That's basically how it works. That's plutocracy. That's not democracy. And until the working class can be informed about this, again, you got to generate awareness about what the consequences of policies actually are. Most people want universal public health care. Most people don't want a obscenely bloated military industrial complex that just is engorged with $1 trillion a year in public funds. Most people don't want that. They want the universal public health care, getting rid of the for-profit sickness treatment industry and insurance companies. People want economic policy that favors the working class, empowerment of organized labor. These are progressive ideals that people need to understand are in their favor, and it's in their interest to support candidates that push these policies. So it's about generating awareness about the policies that actually do help the common man.
Well said, and I couldn't agree with you more. So it's up to each of us to sit like Jonathan Swift when he wrote Gulliver's Travels, a satire about the King of England, not a children's story, but sold as a children's story. People sat in coffee shops, and that's how they communicated, because the King's men were not in the coffee shops; they were in the pubs. So here we are back to Starbucks and talking to people at the grocery store and waking them up and interconnecting with each other. Mason Scott, how do we get your book, which is coming out this weekend, called Gringos Eating Tacos?
Well, Gringos Eating Tacos is primarily about a cultural exchange. It's a survey of the world's cultures and who borrowed what from whom. It addresses the issue of cultural appropriation, the pros and the cons. And it's on Amazon this weekend. You can get it on Amazon. Gringos Eating Tacos, the progressive case for cultural appropriation. If you're interested in the history of world cultures and which cultures borrowed which things from other cultures over the course of history, it's kind of a fun romp through the world and its various cultural offerings.
Wow, pleasure in knowledge.
The last part, as you said, I added an appendix which tries to explain what happened in this past presidential election, why Trump, instead of just complaining and hemming and hawing, I tried to figure out why is it that so much of the working class migrated to MAGA. And it's important to understand why that happened so that we know the best courses going forward.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you, Mason Scott. Your new book is Gringos Eating Tacos, in which you've devoted, like you said at the end, a special appendix to the recent election and eyeballing and deconstructing the shortcomings that we all personally eyewitnessed and felt emotionally. We've been talking a little bit about a prescription and some thoughts on navigating a dystopian future. Again, Gringos Eating Tacos. Mason Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Want you to make sure you sign up for our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com as we move next Friday. Obviously not today, but next Friday to 10 a.m. Pacific, opening up a pathway for Tom Hartman to go Monday through Friday. This is such a win for everyone. He's available to do that now. And we're going to button up the week after Mitch Jeserich. So you can find us next Friday starting at 10. We'll be running some promos on the station, but it's going to be a wild and woolly foray. So you want to absolutely tune in. Coming up, wow. We're going to take a look at the Mississippi bill, which you may or may not have heard of, entitled The Contraception Begins at Erection Act. I'm not kidding you. It's gaining popularity across dozens of red states. It's the beginning of massive surveillance in the United States under the banner of protecting the public from people doing unchristian acts in the privacy of their own homes. The privacy of your own home is enshrined in the Constitution, by the way. But who needs the Constitution? That's what they're saying. It's going to make illegal touching yourself that way, with fines starting at $1,000 and going up to $5,000 for repeat so-called offenders. It's the tip of a giant iceberg, which I'm going to ask you to analyze. It's next.
Keep listening for an exciting offer from US Med. If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain and inconvenience of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call today and learn about the latest CGM technology. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. We'll tell you all you need to know about CGMs. A CGM can immediately reduce pain. It's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And with insurance, you can get a new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. Call now to learn more. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. Plus, get free shipping and we'll bill your insurance company for you. CGMs are the newest in diabetic technology. They can help you stay in range and manage your diabetes better. Call now to receive your new continuous glucose monitor at little or no out-of-pocket cost. And delivery is free. Remember, if you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Call 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. Copays and deductibles may apply. 800-456-6792. That's 800-456-6792. Sponsored by U.S. Medical Supply.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Cary Harrison with you. Want to give a shout out to the great Renee Yawarski. She is our directress. She is, in New York or Philadelphia somewhere. We've got just a big expanded wonderful piece of technology. We have Wendell Handy in the control room at KPFK. The handyman can, whatever you need. So really just such a great group. I'm so grateful. All that to say, starting next Friday, Rethinking Heroes is going to transform into the Cary Harrison files and moving to the 10 a.m. slot, Pacific time, with a sharper, bolder focus, not just a new name, a redistribution of intellectual firepower designed to keep you thinking and questioning and answering the questions that we all have. And the perfect Friday ending to Mitch Jeserich's Letters in Politics is here's how it's going to shake out. Tom Hartman's going to flow seamlessly throughout 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. Yay, to set the stage. Then at 10, the Cary Harrison files are going to take over, delivering this fearless dive into hidden truths, cutting through the nonsense and weaving the threads of our unique landscape. Because in these dystopian times where the crosshairs seem painted on all of us, this is a change that's going to benefit us all with increased firepower, focus, even a few good yucks. So mark your calendars, get ready for something extraordinary. Starting next Friday, we move to 10 a.m. Tell everyone and prepare for a ride you won't forget. And also, we will continue to live stream as we are right this second on YouTube, on Facebook, on X Twitter, on Elon Musk, on everything with a chip and a signal. So technology will continue to expand and reach out, especially to younger people who are going to be the only future we can hope on, or hope for even. So have you heard of, as we open up the phones in just a minute, have you heard of the Mississippi bill entitled The Contraception Begins at Erection Act? It's a classic example of fascism at play. And we were talking about what is fascism just a few minutes ago with Mason Scott. So this bill is a crypto anti-gay measure, since gay marriage is still legal at the federal level, but it makes illegal to issue a, how do I say this carefully, to issue a dollop of seed if it is not intended to fructify an egg. In other words, it makes both masturbation and sterile sex, that would be sex that it is not aimed at fructifying an egg, completely illegal, period, in Mississippi. And the other red states are loving this idea. There's no difference between Sharia law and the Taliban and governments who are starting to see rise up and think this is a great idea. Just in these first days, empowered that much in the first days of this new administration. It's going to make it unlawful for, quote, I'm going to quote here, a person to discharge genetic material without the intent to fertilize an embryo, close quote. The bill introduced yesterday, or a couple of days ago now, imposes fines of $1,000 for a first offense of, quote, reminding you, discharging genetic material without the intent to fertilize an embryo. Fine started at $1,000 for the first offense, $5,000 for a second offense, and $10,000 for any subsequent offenses. If you think your medical bills are high, now, if this bill passes and is signed into law by Mississippi Republican Governor Tate Reeves, it's going to go into effect in about, 4 months. So how do you actually monitor the average 15-year-old boy and his predilections for onanism, or the random self-grasp in the shower, or other things that males routinely do as part of their membership in the animal kingdom? Like Bill Clinton, I never inhaled, but I am aware of these things. And if you believe that, yeah, I'm definitely aware of these things. Quite clearly, you'd have to engage in Orwell's concept of a camera in every room. It's a great example of an excuse to monitor the public at the deepest levels. And don't think it's going to stop with Mississippi. This bill, introduced by Senator Blackmun, it's a thinly veiled attempt to police the bodies of individuals, particularly those, as I said, in the LGBT community. And if you think I'm kidding, The Advocate and GLAAD have now confirmed that all references to LGBTQ plus identities and HIV-related resources have vanished overnight from whitehouse.gov and several federal agency websites, including, ready for this one, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Department of State, and the Department of Labor. Why take away HIV meds and resources? Well, as vaccines may become unavailable for everyone, so will life-saving medications. The quickest way to exterminate a group of people is to let them simply perish. The Nazis referred to enormous groups of people as useless eaters, or as they like to say, translated from German, people who led burdensome lives. And those people were taken to camps, including, and most particularly, the elderly and disabled who couldn't produce for the Reich. It was called their T4 program, or their Tiergarten 4 program. So it's no coincidence that the apartheid-raised South African in charge of reducing the usefulness of the federal government will create one of the largest new government departments that our government has ever seen. It's going to take a massive government expansion in order to reduce the rest of government. The irony upon irony upon irony is obvious for all people still capable of critical thought. And as the late journalist H.L. Mencken said in the 1920s, this is a prime example of the endless series of hobgoblins created by politicians to keep the populace in a state of alarm and distracted from the real issues. So by imposing fines for discharging genetic material without the intent to fertilize an embryo, this bill is essentially criminalizing masturbation and non-procreative sexual activities, which is a clear infringement on individual liberty. Now, I'm not advocating for that, but I will tell you this, a little parenthetical moment. At Kaiser Permanente, which is where I go, my doctor, who's young, he's probably like 35 or so, he's from South Korea, he told me to practice onanism every day. In other words, the very thing that Mississippi and the other red states want to make illegal. Why would a doctor ask you to do that? He said, because your prostate is a gland, and a gland that fills up with the business that it fills up with, if it's not expressed, it becomes boggy. The material in there becomes old, and you end up having bad things happen, which is why at a certain age, so many of us men have these problems. So if you express the gland and keep it going, you're very likely to be able to avoid a lot of this stuff in the future. I said, so you're asking me to do that? He said, yes. I said, can I have a prescription? He said, no. I just thought, if it's a prescription, but I think you get the point. So apart from the medical smartness of that sort of thing, this is a clear infringement on everybody's liberties. An individual liberty, our liberties, are enshrined in our Constitution. Not only enshrined, but insisted upon. The inalienable right of self-determination, self-determination, self-determination. This kind of legislation, it's a slippery slope. It's going to pave the way for further government overreach and the intrusion on your private life and your privates. This bill is a manifestation of the puritanical impulse to punish the man with a superior capacity for happiness. It's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's designed to stir up moral panic. It's designed to distract from the real issues that are facing the people of Mississippi and all the other red states, and then all the rest of us after the fact. It's going to set a template for dozens of red states to follow suit, including complementary installations of monitoring equipment in each and every home. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily, in the Orwellian sense, a camera in every living room, but I can tell you when I was in Havana, Cuba, for the short window under President Obama when we could go visit for humanitarian purposes, that window has now been slammed and nailed shut under the current administration. But when I was there, I was talking to the bellman in one of the hotels. And he said he had been arrested by the Cuban secret police because he had met with one of the U.S. Embassy's attaches and had a little affair, it turns out. Now, who's going to know that anyone has had an affair in a country that is, let's just say, rustic, to put it politely? Except that his iPhone is nothing more than a 24-hour active microphone, very much like Siri, your Amazon Echo or Echo Dot, which I have stupidly, but it's great to turn all the lights on at one time and all the lights off. But I also mute it. And I can tell you at Fidelity and other Wall Street firms, in discussions with them, they are not allowed as financial advisors to talk to you as a client with any Amazon device or their iPhone or any phone in the room. They must turn it off. We saw this back in the 2000s when Dick Cheney, whose nickname was Angler, his federal nickname with the Secret Service, he would always pull the battery out of his phone back when you could. And he was asked by the press at one point, why are you taking the battery out? He said, because my phone is a hot microphone. Who would know better? So we have evidence. So here's this bellman in Cuba who's been arrested by the Cuban secret police. That's how they know he was having an affair. And they assumed that he was spreading state secrets. Not that he knew any, but the U.S. Embassy attaché. They wanted to know everything he had said in the past 3 weeks. They knew literally word by word every single thing he had said in the past 3 weeks because his iPhone was on. The way yours is on. When you charge it, you probably leave it on in the kitchen, next to your bed, whatever. Everything you say is permanently recorded. Sure, Apple says, oh, we're very, very concerned about your privacy. And Mark Zuckerberg, same thing, as he spends Thanksgiving at Mar-a-Lago. So just know you got a hot mic 24 hours a day. Do you need to put cameras in a room? No. You carry it around willingly on your hip. Did not exist during the time of George Orwell. Maybe there was the Dick Tracy watch in comic books, but this is way more elegant. And let's face it, you love your phone. You're in love with it. You're married to it. You can't be apart from it for more than 5 minutes. So it's the perfect fix. Think about this bill. We're going to open up the phones in just a second. Think about what it takes to think up such a bill. Any first-year psychology student would be able to unravel the wretched personal peccadillos of that senator who is obsessed with other people's normal behavior patterns. Clearly, he's still suffering from traumas from tossing off in front of the family spaniel or whatever thing he did that embarrassed him. There's always complicated and perverse backstories to people who carry the biggest mallets. It makes sense that a man who cannot attract other upright mammals would want to stop the virile ambitions of those still capable of attracting other sentient beings. And let's not forget the purpose of blocking abortion across dozens of states. It really has nothing to do with doing the hokey pokey. It's very similar to the Mississippi bill in that it pushes up the white birth rate while punishing those who do not create new babies for whatever reason. It's about forcing women and their fertilizers to reproduce and expand the white population to be groomed for the now dominant political party. It was done exactly like this in Nazi Germany when the Fuhrer made it the law that each woman should have 4 beautiful Aryan babies. Think about it. Have you ever heard anyone really squawking about stopping women of color from having abortions? Think about it. Go through your memory. Crickets. It's completely not on the radar politics of their reality. It's always about Jennifer and Janet and Jessica, Julia, Jacqueline, Jasmine, Jocelyn, Jordan, Justine, Jamie, Jillian, Janine, Jolene, Janelle, and Jade. This is the layer under the layer of the plan behind the plan. If we learned anything from Watergate, it was follow the money. In this case, it's not only the money, but it's the power. Follow the power, follow the plan, follow the policy. The contradictions and hypocrisies are so enormous that they're not even slightly shocking anymore, right? The fact that we, in the complicit media, are debating Mr. Musk's overt Nazi salute as if he was simply having a spasm is the part that's most worrisome to me. It was a full-on, perfectly executed Hitler greeting, exactly as was performed tens of thousands of times throughout the Reich, and Herr Musk even delivered it with a nice emotional grunt at the moment of its flawless execution. An obvious historical irony, right? How interesting that Hitler surrounded himself with complete, and this is the irony again, he surrounded himself with complete non-Aryans. Goebbels with jet black hair and a club foot, Himmler, who was a midget, Goering, who was barely able to walk across the room. Trump has an immigrant wife and is Hitler saluted by another immigrant while looking to deport immigrants. This is such a perfect retelling of the path up to World War II, including threats to invade Canada and Mexico, the same way Germany invaded Poland. Thankfully, NATO still exists, and an invasion of an ally would trigger Article 5, which would mean poor Greece would have to send its former Spartans to go help Canada. And the irony of ironies, former Nazi Germany would have to help the Mexicans. I mean, my God, it's a graphic novel. It's an episode of something, and I'm having an episode. I want your predictions during this Handmaid's Tale come true. How far can they go, and is there still a reasonable safety net? Are we creating an impossible abyss, and what can we do to save each other? Is the Constitution in tatters, or do you think it can survive a hearty shredding? I want you to call in now, solve this puzzle. Tell me what you see, tell me where you think it's going. Let me give you your Harrison hotlines. They are 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. More in a sec.
Keep listening for an exciting offer from US Med. If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain and inconvenience of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call today and learn about the latest CGM technology. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. We'll tell you all you need to know about CGMs. A CGM can immediately reduce pain. It's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And with insurance, you can get a new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. Call now to learn more. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. Plus, get free shipping and we'll bill your insurance company for you. CGMs are the newest in diabetic technology. They can help you stay in range and manage your diabetes better. Call now to receive your new continuous glucose monitor at little or no out-of-pocket cost. And delivery is free. Remember, if you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, Call today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Call 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. Copays and deductibles may apply. 800-456-6792. That's 800-456-6792. Sponsored by U.S. Medical Supply.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com, reminding you to get our free newsletter so that we can keep in touch. It'll include transcripts of this show and everything else going on so we can stay in touch. By the way, I'm just informed that our phone lines suddenly went down. Now, these are no longer coincidences. These are no longer like, oh, it's AT&T, it's their fault. This stuff happens so predictably. Obviously, you calling in is not what they want. So they have killed the phone lines. We have literally no dial tone. However, we're going to let him do that, and I'll get a notification when he's got that done. So Kellogg, who ran the Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan, believed that if a boy during puberty touched himself that way, he's the guy that came up with growing hair on your palms from all of that. He's the guy that came up with all of these things that many of us were taught that were ridiculous, that nobody should believe. So he came up with genital cages with teeth in them, very much like a chastity belt for a woman, but they were for boys if they touched themselves. It would spring shut. It would cause a mutilation. Obviously, they were not popular. Parents decided not to use them. After about 3 of them were probably sold. But he came up with this notion that it was going to kill you. And he said famously, an erection is a flagpole on your grave, the same thing they're saying in Mississippi. And so he decided, explaining or convincing the public, because he had written a manual on personal hygiene. So late 1800s, we still don't have sterility in the operating room. We still have doctors just taking their hands wherever they were and sticking it in your guts, and you're probably going to die of an infection. So we don't know about this stuff. So his early manual on hygiene said that you must circumcise all boys for cleanliness. Not untrue, but not necessary, because there is something called soap. They use it all over the world, and we even had it back then. But what did it do? He waited until later in life, around the age of puberty, and it caused scarring and infection, and people ended up with real mutilations and what we call Peyronie's syndrome, just scar tissue bent in angles, painful, terrible, and you're never going to touch the thing again. It worked. Part of our puritanical hangover. Much more to say about him, how he died, and how it ended up. But it looks like we've got, so Harold is there. Wendell, if you can connect your mic to our studio. In other words, Wendell, if you can, open a mic. Maybe Wendell can't, maybe we can't take the call. So we'll find out from a message here. We're trying to work around to see if this will work. But Wendell, you would need a microphone into the software. You could kick on the mic on your audio board and speak through your audio board, and it would go into the software the same way the phone lines are mixed in to the board. So why don't we try that and see if that works? And you could just do it as a test while I'm talking. And if I hear somebody, then I will know it works. Do you see the lengths we now have to go in 2025? A radio station, the strongest FM west of the Mississippi. KPFK is one of the first 5 radio stations that ever existed on FM. It is a legacy, gigantic blowtorch of a radio station, and they cut the phone lines. So here we are doing a live show trying to invent a workaround for you so that you can call in and respond. And we have to, make up ways to try to get the audio through. I mean, it's so insane. Looks like, Joey, you jumped on our kpfk.net link. Good for you. We can go to Joey. Hi, Joey. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hello. Sorry it's dark. I'm outdoors and it's night. I live in Berlin.
Excellent.
Yeah, I thought I would tune in because I heard you talk about Hitler's incentive for women to have lots of babies. I was taught at school that he actually offered them like cash prizes and little medals if they had a certain number of kids, and the more they had, the more money that they got, and they were kind of pedestalized. But the problem is Trump doesn't have enough. He's not got enough mileage left in the tank to actually see those children reach an age where they can be used as cannon fodder, essentially. So I don't see, I mean, like, obviously he wants white Americans to breed like rabbits, but he's not going to see an expansion of the military from babies that are born in this day and age. It's the people who are already Americans that he will want to fight to expand the empire.
What an excellent point. So the reason that Hitler needed more young people is that he had lost so many soldiers, and so he needed to replenish the population of Germany. We have a different kind of military with no conscription, so it's voluntary and you get paid. And we know what 90% of the volunteers that get paid in the military look like. They are not generally the children of white senators. So that part is already handled. It's the people that are running the show. Where the party is small, it's aging out. I mean, people are 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 in the Republican Party generally. Even though we did see a big shift in this election, generally it's older white people, and they are aging out and dying out, and they need to be replaced. So in this way, by getting rid of abortion, and we know this from Bloomberg, from the Wall Street Journal, which is one of the greatest places to get your news. Why? Because they dispassionately report on the reason things are happening and why you should invest. So much like doing the background information on is a company solid or not, they understood that, well, the purpose of getting rid of abortion, you can say it's religious, you can touch the religious chords of individual people, but it's simply to add, ready for this number? Plus 150,000 white people a year. We are down before the Supreme Court loosened up and made impossible for people to get abortions in many red states. We were down 150,000 white people a year, which meant the GOP was shrinking, withering, and going to disappear. Now it is plus 150,000. That means in 2 years, it's 500,000. In 3 years, you get it, exponentially exploding.
So it's for the voting base.
That's it. The voting base keeps people in power. The people in power then are all bank robbers. They're just stealing everything. They're taking the Medicare. They're taking the cash for that. Watch Elon Musk, who has so many federal contracts at the federal government, the same government he is looking to destroy because it's so bad. What could be worse than a federal government?
Do you know, I do believe with Elon it was a spasm and he came in his pants when he groaned. So,
okay. Well, I thank you for your call, my friend. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate it. Appreciate the humor. All right. Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more. We've got a workaround for the call. Let's bring on, it's either going to be Harold. I think it's Harold or T from Glendale. Either one. Welcome. You're on Rethinking Heroes. Hello there. Let's see if the phone is working. I hear something. I hear a click. Well, probably not. As you can see, we've had to work around. We've got like a full line of calls that cannot get on the air because we don't even have a dial tone. We were just able to take one because some people have the technical savvy. Do I hear a voice there? Do you hear my voice? Yes, go ahead, please.
Brother Cary Harrison, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you great. Go ahead. You can't hear me
because I'm talking, but I can't hear him on the radio. He can't.
All right, we're going to have to let you go, but I do thank you. It's impossible for you to hear because the technology doesn't allow it through a speakerphone, unfortunately, without a bunch of feedback and loops. But good for us and good for you, Wendell Handy, for coming up with a workaround solution using a phone when our phone lines are dead. We don't even have a dial tone at the studio. The strongest FM west of the Mississippi, a public radio station. They have pulled the phones off the air as soon as we opened the phone lines. We did have somebody jump on kpfk.net. Please remember that. Use it from now on as we move next Friday to 10 a.m. So as we come to the end of the show, let me thank the great Renee Yawarski, our director and bosom buddy and goddess. Upon my knee, I sit in supplication to Wendell Handy, our engineer at KPFK. Next Friday, we move to 10 a.m. This will now become the Tom Hartman Show, Monday through Friday. We were able to make that happen for you. After Mitch Jeserich, Monday through Thursday, we're going to be there. It's rebranded as the Cary Harrison Files. We're going to be exploring what happened today, what's happening, and keep our finger on the pulse of what you can do to survive and flourish in these incredible Handmaid's Tale dystopian times. You have a right to be happy and whole. It's in the Constitution, and we are hell-bent on making sure you do and getting you the information you need. So once again, next Friday, 10 a.m., not 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Pacific for the Cary Harrison Files. You're going to get Tom Hartman Monday through Friday. So glad we were able to do that. So glad he's available. And so glad to have you aboard, you listening, and you with me. And I'm so grateful to be here with you. Don't forget to get our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com. Rethinkingheroes.com. We'll get a transcript of this, archives of all the shows, and stuff we simply cannot say on the air since they cut the phone lines. Real evidence of things to come in the next 4 years. Looking forward to seeing you next week at 10 a.m.
Keep listening for an exciting offer from US Med. If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain and inconvenience of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call today and learn about the latest CGM technology. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. We'll tell you all you need to know about CGMs. A CGM can immediately reduce pain. It's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And with insurance, you can get a new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. Call now to learn more. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. Plus, get free shipping and we'll bill your insurance company for you. CGMs are the newest in diabetic technology. They can help you stay in range and manage your diabetes better. Call now to receive your new continuous glucose monitor at little or no out-of-pocket cost. And delivery is free. Remember, if you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Call 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. 800-456-6792. Copays and deductibles may apply. 800-456-6792. That's 800-456-6792. Sponsored by U.S. Medical Supply.
Listen while it's still legal. Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. Rethinkingheroes.com.